Get Rich Education is brought to you by Audible. More than 150,000 audiobooks to choose from for your mobile device.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to Get Rich Education, Show 22. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. I'm grateful that you're here, and I hope that you had a nice week. With listeners in 102 countries, it's the show where I famously help you learn how to make money follow you, rather than you following money like one does if all their income is derived from a workaday job. You know, I think I told you last week that my wife is visiting family in Asia now. That's left me home alone. She's Filipina, and apparently I've gotten very dependent on Rosanelle doing all of the healthy cooking for me. Rosanelle does all the grocery shopping for us while she's here too, so it's just not quite worth me going to the supermarket to figure out that whole process of where things are located on shelves if I only need to do it once before she gets home. It's just making for a tough week on my diet here, but I'm going to make it. The other night I got Subway takeout. 2 nights ago another family had me over for dinner, but last night I was home alone for dinner again, and my dinner was almonds. Okay. Hey, well, we don't talk about food very much on this show, but 3 essential human needs are food, shelter, and safety. We focus on the shelter, housing, real estate. So why does real estate come into our weekly wealth-building conversation so often? Like my show says, that's the investment that's created more wealthy people out of ordinary people than anything else. And you don't need any certification or formal education or training or a degree to do real estate. You know, I travel the United States and outside the United States to find profitable real estate markets. When I find a trusted team member, I often invite that person onto the show for your benefit, and I've done that again today. So, hey, first, it was fun to share more about Anchorage, Alaska's investment real estate market on last week's show with you. And, you know, I've been invited to be a guest on other business and investment shows now. And those show hosts, when they're interviewing me, are often fascinated by the fact that I do this from Anchorage, Alaska, so that usually works its way into the discussion. One question that I'm often asked goes like, Keith, if you travel around visiting different investment real estate markets, why don't you live in a more centrally located place like Chicago, St. Louis, or Kansas City, for example? But if you listened to the last episode, now you understand the answer. And if you didn't hear it, in short, it's for the great lifestyle Anchorage offers. And I live 8 minutes from Anchorage International Airport, and I can be in the 48 states in a little over 3 hours. I will be skiing on world-class ski trails 20 minutes after this show. I live here for the lifestyle. With technological innovation decentralizing and dematerializing the way that business is done, you're only going to hear about more people in the future living where they want to live. For example, I don't have to be at WABC Studios in New York every time I do this show. So, one market I've visited for a specific investment real estate tour is Dallas-Fort Worth, and the reputable person to know in that market that can acquire and manage a property that you own for investment is Jay Hartley, and he's my guest today. To find investment real estate, start with what you want to get out of it. That's first. Secondly, find a sustainable geographic market where job growth exists. Thirdly, find a great team, including your property manager, and only then do you concern yourself with the property. Fourthly, if any of those first 3 aren't right, what fits you, what's the market, what's the team, then it doesn't matter how nice a rental property looks. Look should only matter in the home that you live inside. That's really the only time when emotions enter. Dallas-Fort Worth is a market with fantastic job growth and diverse economic sectors, and Jay is whom I've come to know and trust to secure returns for investors in this market. I know Jay. I've sat down with him before in his office at Classic Property Management in Arlington, Texas. Arlington is right between Dallas and Fort Worth, if you didn't know. I've met both his mother, Kay, and his brother, Brandon, there too. They work there. It's a family company, and it's not a small company. They have lots of other people working with Classic. On Get Rich Education, I've told you about buying a cash-flowing rental property from reputable out-of-market property providers before when we had Memphis, Tennessee's Terry Kerr on the show for episode 9. That was a popular show, probably because you were delivered something very actionable and served on a platter for you. Well, I'm doing that again today with Jay Hartley in Dallas. Just comparing the two markets, Memphis and Dallas, I think that Memphis is going to provide you with more cash flow, Dallas with more potential appreciation on the property, though hopefully both markets will provide you with both things, just different measures of each one. And that's just a general statement. Every market is made up of sub-markets, and then further, every sub-market is made up of neighborhoods. Keep in mind that investing involves risk and do your own due diligence. Not every investment works out, and in those, hopefully few times that it doesn't, I just kind of hope that doesn't come off as a negative reflection on me. Here's what I mean. With Reef Oil Gas, I featured them on the show. The price of a barrel of oil is down. Well, that's probably going to hit your cash flow in the short term, but you might be buying assets now at a cheaper price that will benefit you over time if the price of oil rises. Well, in real estate, sometimes things go wrong with a rental property that you buy. You might buy a rental home where your home inspector didn't notice a structural defect. You might get a tenant placed in your property that soon has major unforeseen medical expenses and cannot pay the rent, so you have to evict them, and on and on. I know that some listeners might learn about a cash-flowing real estate provider through me, have something like that happen, and it might come back as a poor reflection on me, whether that's fair or not. I can't control everything. No one can. Things happen. Most any venture in life is a risk. Just like when you put your seatbelt on, pull your car out of the driveway, and soon enter the freeway with every car at 65 miles an hour and 4 lanes wide. So it's about mitigating risk, because there is a good potential upside when you're educated. So just providing more ideas and information here. Remember, when tenant rent income exceeds all the property expenses, you have made money follow you. But I do want you to account for all of those monthly expenses, like a mortgage and VIMTM, V-I-M-T-M, which I discussed in the first vocab rehab show in episode 10. VIMTM is vacancy, insurance, maintenance, taxes, and management, plus account for any utilities and CapEx. That's likely what you're looking for. So I'll leave it up to you to compare Memphis and Dallas among my two preferred providers. The best providers might have to put investors on a waiting list until a property becomes available. You know what happens when a provider has a waiting list? I'm actually pleased in a way. Yeah. I'm not pleased to wait, but rather pleased that provider is being selective. I don't want a provider to endlessly tell prospective investors, oh yeah, here, we've got a rental property for you to buy. The monthly expenses are going to be higher than your income, but you ought to be able to raise the rents over time. No, that's not what you want to hear. You want every expectation that rent income will exceed expenses from day one, and a willingness to wait for that if you have to in Memphis or in Dallas. When I travel to these markets, I don't try to figure out everything myself. I try to find the provider that shows me that they have the integrity and know-how to most efficiently provide investors with cash-flowing property. Again, I use a team. When I visit markets like Philadelphia or Dallas, I can look at neighborhoods with providers all week, but that still wouldn't help me understand what the character of the neighborhood was 10 years ago because I don't live in Philadelphia or Dallas. So even when I'm boots on the ground, I use my team to help determine what are the up-and-coming city submarkets and neighborhoods? Which ones are becoming more blighted and less desirable to live in now? Or which ones are becoming more or less desirable to live in now because the school district boundary changed and now families don't want to live in one area as much as they do another? Or what about a new hospital opening up nearby that's changing the character of that submarket and good jobs are moving there and that's where the sustainable rents are going? See, that's what a team helps me do. So preferably I do both. Number one, I get on the ground myself, and number two, I look at the market with the right reputable provider or manager. That person is Terry Kerr in Memphis. In Anchorage, it's Roy Briley, and in Dallas, it's Jay Hartley. Jay and I are going to discuss the Dallas-Fort Worth market first. Then, after we discuss the market, we're going to let you be a fly on the wall as you get to overhear how I interviewed Jay, quote unquote, over the phone. We do a little role-playing game where I play the investor outside of Texas, asking Jay about his property management services. Now, this is not a real phone conversation between Jay and I, all right? So this is somewhat contrived. He knows me, so he knows about what questions I might ask, but this still ought to be pretty cool for a listener. I'm going to put Jay on the hot seat, and we'll see if he can cool it off. Another thing that's pretty cool is that, like some of my past guests have, Jay is also a Get Rich Education listener himself, and he's heard every episode. Now he gets to hear himself featured on one, so here we go with Jay Hartley. Jay Hartley acquires, leases, and manages residential properties for Classic Property Management in Arlington, Texas, which services Dallas-Fort Worth. Jay is past president of his local chapter of NARPM, that's the National Association of Residential Property Managers. Jay is also a member of the Arlington Board of Realtors, and he's a member in good standing of both the Texas Association of Realtors and the National Association of Realtors. Welcome to Get Rich Education, Jay Hartley.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So, through a real estate investor lens, how would you describe the character of the Dallas-Fort Worth market?
Well, for years and years, we've had a slow and steady growth, which has been fantastic. Appreciation was rising every year. Now, the DFW marketplace itself has just exploded with a influx of new jobs, new job growths, corporate headquarters moving to this area, and we're just exploding. But we have a shortage of inventory to be able to offer, so we have more tenants than we do properties.
And I appreciate you saying that. You know, I think a lot of people want to come on the show and say that their business is exploding, but to my listeners, unless you've been, living under a rock or something, really, business is exploding in Texas, and a lot of people are moving there. In fact, over a recent period, Texas created more jobs than the rest of the United States combined. So for an investor advantage type of purchase there, Jay, I mean, what kind of price point are investors looking for in single-family homes?
I try to educate my clients as much as I can. You may have an idea of what your marketplace is like wherever you're from, to be honest with you. But the sweet spot here is $130,000 to $170,000 range. I mean, we have houses that range from $50,000 on up to $2 million. But the sweet spot for investors and the areas that we focus in on are the $130,000 to $170,000. That's the best return. That's the highest probability of quick rents, low turnovers, lengthy occupancy. So that's really kind of where we focus.
Okay, and what kind of rents could we expect on those investor advantage properties between $130,000 and $170,000?
Generally, you're looking right around 1%. Sometimes we can get a little bit better. Sometimes it's a little bit less. But generally, the rule of thumb is if it's 1% or really close to it, it's attractive. And we do a lot of research and a lot of scouring for properties to find the best deals and the best returns. We obviously want to get the most amount of money we can on a rental rate for a home that we acquire. So we do a lot of research trying to find those good deals, but generally the rough rule of thumb is 1%.
Okay, and the 1% Jay's referring to, my longtime listeners know this, that's what I call the RV ratio or the rent-to-value ratio. For example, with a $150,000 purchase price on a property, you should be getting a monthly rent income of $1,500. So it's that ratio of monthly rent income to purchase price that you typically want at 1% or higher to get cash flow each month, and that's general.
That's exactly right.
Now, one thing that the rent-to-value ratio does not consider are property taxes in not just the Dallas-Fort Worth market, but I think we know in most all of Texas, property taxes in relation to the purchase price on a home are relatively high, and the RV ratio doesn't account for that. So how do you advise investors that way? And then, where do tax protests go if there is a significant tax increase from one year to the next on that investment property?
Sure, that's a great question. That's one of the things we've always battled in Texas has been the high property taxes. Generally, you're going to be somewhere in the 3% per year range as far as tax rate goes. They vary on different areas and municipalities, but Texas as a whole does not have a state income tax. For that reason, there's tremendous job growths. There's thousands of people move into this area, corporations, that kind of thing, and they're coming here because we do not have a state income tax. To offset that, Texas does have a state property tax, and that's just one of the things you have to calculate for in your prospectus. Whenever you're putting together a deal for a client, you have to evaluate what the tax rate's going to be. Is it reasonable? If for any reason there ever is a significant tax increase, there is the ability to go and protest your taxes. It's relatively easy for the clients to do it. We can do it for them. They can hire companies to do it, and you can get a reduction in your tax base. It's not going to be tremendous, but you can't always protest it if it's something crazy. But there is the tax rate that you have to take into consideration. And if your cash flow analysis is good enough to be able to support the taxes, the insurance, the carrying costs, everything else, and it's still a good deal, jump on it.
Okay, so in the beginning there, Jay mentioned a 3% tax rate. And what he's talking about is, again, on a $150,000 property, for example, the annual property tax obligation would be 3% of that $150K or $4,500 a year. Now, one key thing for out-of-state investors to remember is that in Texas, those residents don't have to pay any state income tax. It's zero, but they do pay a higher property tax. So for them, in their mind, hey, it kind of evens out or it works out. But for an out-of-state investor, they may not have the benefit of paying no state income tax in the state that they live in, yet they have to pay a higher property tax on their investment property. If you live in Indiana and you're buying an investment property in Texas, you have to go ahead and pay Texas property tax no matter what. But if the cash flow accounts for all that, it's just one of those things you need to take into consideration.
It is.
So, we talk about all this job growth that's happening in Texas, and how does that trickle down to you and who you manage there now, Jay? Who are the tenants that are coming into that area today? What are they like?
I have a mix. We still have the blue collar workers that are coming in for the shipping industries and the oil field workers and everything else. But the biggest influx have been the white collar, the engineers and the corporate execs that are moving here with AT&T and Toyota and the big corporate headquarters for American. And they all need a place to live. And the majority of clients that are moving to this area don't necessarily want to come in for a 1 week pre-visit before they actually come down here to work and then buy a house. So generally they're coming to look to lease for the next couple of years so they can figure out the area, make sure they know where they want to live and buy on the correct side of the tracks. So they'll lease for a couple of years and then look to buy. Okay, so if they're looking to lease for a couple years, what's that do for your typical time of tenancy? And what's your vacancy time between tenancy, and how does that result in your overall portfolio occupancy rate? We've done a lot of research to kind of calculate occupancy and vacancy and time to turnover. Over the last year and a half, we've averaged about a 3-week or 22-day vacancy time frame as far as a property going vacant. That ranges from everything that we have from our small little duplexes and efficiency complexes all the way up to our larger single family homes. So the vacancy time, or turnover time as we call it, is averaging about 3 weeks. The occupancy rate right now for the last 6 months has been averaging for us at 97%. So the majority of our tenants are either renewing their leases and staying longer, or the turnover has been so quick it's hard to calculate any kind of a vacancy.
Okay. See, listeners, I really like a specific answer from Jay. You know, he's talking 22 days and things like that. And he's someone that sounds like he knows his numbers, and he's just not giving fluff like saying, oh, there's about a week of vacancy or whatever. That's great. So what about for those real estate investors that buy the types of properties that you manage? What's the character of the investor and where are they from?
The majority of the investors are educated real estate investors that have done it in other areas, and they have followed the trends and know the marketplace and where the money's to be made. And that is largely clients coming from all over the world. I mean, I have clients from China, Australia, Texas. One of my clients lives 3 doors down from my house. So I have anywhere and everywhere, California, Alaska, pretty much everywhere I have clients contacting me. And one of the unique aspects is we really have to concentrate on time zones. And I have some clients that will call me in the middle of the night and want to have a chit chat about their portfolio. And,
Great.
Yeah, it's kind of funny sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure you're laughing a lot when that happens.
I try to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Well, you talked about inventories being tight a little bit earlier. So, in a population growth market and in a job growth market, do you have owner-occupied buyers competing with these investors for inventory? What's that looking like?
We do. It has truly become a seller's market, and the limited inventory that we have is across the board. So for owner occupied or for investors that are looking to purchase, inventory is tight. So, we've really had to focus in and do a quick due diligence period on any prospective property we're looking to buy, and then we have to pull the trigger in a rapid form. We want to make sure once we find a good deal that we're on it and we're buying it. And if I have clients ready and lined up to go when I call them and they're ready to buy, great. If not, I'll buy it. But I don't want to miss an opportunity. And that's changed over the years, where we had plenty of time to do diligence in the past. Now it's become just a quick process, and we've tried to refine it to where it goes fast and that we get the information that everybody needs out rapidly and get a client or an investor that's ready to do it immediately.
Yeah, that's great, Jay. Well, Jay, you've got a terrific knowledge base. That's why I'm having you on the show. You've got extensive experience with acquisitions, with the leasing side, and then with the ongoing management side too. I mean, you've seen an awful lot in real estate, and you've seen an awful lot in investing. You've become a pretty savvy investor yourself. So if you were to provide ideas and information to a young 22-year-old investing enthusiast, what would you tell them about the best way to invest their time and resources? And this doesn't necessarily have to be real estate, though it can be.
Sure. Research is the most important key for me in anything I'm thinking about getting into. I'm not great in the stock market, but I'd like to think that I am getting better at it. Obviously the majority of my investments personally are in real estate, but I have been getting a little more interested in the stock market. And for that, I've done a lot of research. I read books, I watch podcast videos, listen to somebody that's a lot more experienced and a lot that has a lot of knowledge to offer, and learn from anybody. So anything that you're thinking about doing, you need to do your research and get as much information as you can, because you can fail many a times. And you want to try and mitigate that as much as you can by letting somebody else explain to you what to do and what not to do.
I like that. So I'm hearing research as the answer, and that's pretty much aligned with what we do here at Get Rich Education, because research is education, and winners view education as an investment, losers view education as an expense. Thinking about some of our younger investors and or investors that just don't have a whole lot of money, what have you found is one of the best things that you can purchase for under $100 that has the greatest immediate impact on your life?
Under $100. To be honest with you, I buy books like crazy. And I think if I had $100 to spend and that was it, and I needed the most bang for my buck, I would be buying books that pertain to the subject I was interested in exploring, or multiple books on different subjects and find the one that fits for me. So I've spent quite a fortune on books over the years, and loaned them out and given them out, and I keep buying them all the time. So books for research would be my answer.
Yeah. Any favorites?
I just read Ken McElroy's The Sleeping Giant. I hate to throw names out there, but that was an eye-opening book for me. So great research, great material in it.
Excellent. And we are going to have Ken McElroy on the show down the road here. I haven't told my listeners that yet. So yeah. Hey, great, Jay. All right. Well, we're going to bring it back after this next segment. And Jay and I are going to do the role play, where I am going to play the part of the skeptical out-of-state investor. And I'm basically going to be interviewing Jay, just like we're doing a call over the phone. And I'm going to let you, listener, be the fly on the wall to hear how that all plays out. It ought to be pretty interesting right when we come back with Jay Hartley on Get Rich Education. For Get Rich Education listeners, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. My pick is Garrett Sutton's Loopholes of Real Estate. That shows you the tax and legal strategies used by the rich for generations to benefit from real estate investments. I read the book myself. Loopholes of Real Estate tells you how to open tax loopholes for your benefit and close legal loopholes for your protection. I like Chapter 3, where Garrett makes the knowledge dynamite boom on real estate leverage and cash flow. I don't say this often, but it's one of the best real estate investing books I've ever read. If that's not enough, you get Garrett's own voice reading the audiobook, and Get Rich Education listeners get it free. To get yours, go to audibletrial.com/getricheducation.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Garrett Sutton. To grow your wealth, listen to the always valuable Get Rich Education.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education with our guest today, Jay Hartley with Classic Property Management in Arlington, Texas. All right, listeners, so I told you a little bit earlier about how in this part of the show, I'm going to play the part of the skeptical out-of-state investor. I'm going to act like I don't know Jay at all, but I have had him referred to me from somebody else. And just say I've never even visited this market before, and I need to get some confidence that I have a good property manager that's going to manage my property. Management makes or breaks a property. And, I just want to kind of get some confidence that I know that my property manager is not going to be renting to tenants that want to raise iguanas in the living room. So I'm going to go ahead and act like I'm calling up Jay right now. And why don't we say that I called up Classic Property Management, and then I was transferred over to Jay, and then I'm going to play the part, a role-playing part here, of the skeptical investor.
Hi, this is Jay with Classic. How can I help you?
Yeah, hi Jay. My name's Keith. I just want to be sure I'm transferred to the right person. Are you in charge of acquisitions and management there at Classic?
I am. I'd be happy to talk to you about that, Keith. What are you thinking about?
Okay, well, I'm from Anchorage, Alaska. I've never visited that market. I know that Dallas, Texas provides a lot of job growth. I think it's a good market to maybe invest in. I really need a manager. You were referred to me, Jay. How long have you managed investment properties?
I've been managing homes for 13 years. My company's been in business for 25 years.
Quite a long time. That's pretty good. So are you a licensed real estate agent, or what kind of professional organizations are you part of?
That's a good question, Keith. I am a licensed real estate agent. I have memberships in TAR, which is Texas Association of Realtors, NAR, the local boards, Arlington Board of Realtors, also members of NARPM and IRM. So those are property management firms that we're members of.
Okay. How many properties do you manage right now, your company?
My company is it's just over 800 homes, about 823 at last count. I'm personally responsible for just over 400 of them.
I don't know if I like that. Like, how am I going to know that my homes get attention from you guys?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, we have teams that take care of our investment portfolios. So depending on how large the division is or the portfolios are, they will each have a manager, an assistant manager, and at least one leasing agent that oversee that property. And then there's a head of each property management division that is responsible for making sure they all do their job. So we try to make sure there's well-covered supervision of each of the properties. So generally speaking, usually about every 100 homes will have a manager, assistant manager, and at least one leasing agent. And then there's a maintenance coordinator that takes care of any maintenance issues and so forth. We like to try and think of ourselves as well supervising each of the homes.
Okay. It sounds like you're pretty well organized and you've got a good team there yourself. Like, how well do you know the area I'm investing in? Because, like, I hear Dallas-Fort Worth is good, but I can't just throw a dart at a map and hope to find a winner. I mean, can you help me out there? Like, steer me to the right area where I'm going to have a good, sustainable tenant with a good cash flow?
The first thing that we'd want to do is I realize that you're calling me to interview me now, but once we get you set up and on our client list, we go through an education process. We want to try and interview you as well to find out what your goals are. And then from that, we're going to make sure it fits with our management style and make sure that we're a good fit for each other. So the Dallas-Fort Worth market is a vast market. So there's certain areas that we really focus in on, and we want to make sure that you're going to be the right client that's going to be interested in the properties that are sought after here. In other words, I mean, you could, depending on where you're coming from, you could see $1 million home as something very sustainable and be a good rental. Here, $1 million home is out of the question. Typically, we're going to be in the 130 to 200,000 range. We're looking at rents of around 1%, and we just want to make sure that fits in your goals as far as building a portfolio. And we look at management and investments in property as a marathon, not a sprint. So if you're in the flipping market, that's probably not going to fit with what we do. So we want to make sure we're a good fit for each other first and foremost.
Yeah, I need to know that because I'm not going to be able to come down there and look at these properties anytime soon. So I'd really like to look at some neighborhoods, but I'm going to have you be my eyes for me. How do you actually get the best tenants? I know there's a lot of job growth there, but like, I guess, what's your marketing strategy? Like, how do I know that you're not going to rent my property to tenants that want to flush beer cans down the toilet or they think it's a great idea to change their motorcycle oil in the family room? I mean, how do I know that you're not going to give me a tenant like that?
Well, to be honest with you, I get that question a lot. And the first thing that we do when we're marketing homes is we set an expectation with the prospective tenants to know that we're serious about what we do. We're not an owner that's trying to rent out their house by putting one of the store-bought for rent signs in the yard and a marker phone number on there so that they can call. We're a real management company. We do background checks on every prospective tenant we do. Anybody over the age of 18, I don't care if it's grandma that's going to live with you or the college student that's staying at home. If they're above the age of 18, they have to fill out a pretty lengthy application. And then we do a very thorough background check. We do everything from running credit, checking criminal, verifying employment and income, past rental or mortgage payment history, and I want to know if there's any skeletons in the closet. So the one thing that's going to be the most indicative of a bad tenant is going to be their history. And if I can find a tenant with bad history, then I know I don't want them. So there's plenty of tenants to go around and good tenants for the properties. I don't need a bad one. They can go rent somebody else's house. So first and foremost is going to be the screening. And then I'm going to charge them a deposit that's at least equal to 1 month's rent. So I'm going to have a pretty substantial deposit up there that cannot be used for rent at any point. So the tenants are eligible to get all that money back at the end of their lease so that they can have a nice check whenever they move out. They left my house in good condition. I'll write them a check and they'll be on their merry way. If for some reason they damage the property, then I'm taking it out of their deposit. And if need be, I'll go after them for it. So from that, once we've approved a tenant, get them to sign the lease, we go over everything with them, what they're responsible for, from extermination to keeping the grass cut to making sure they report any issues with the home. And then after or when a tenant moves in, we do an orientation with them where we meet them at the house. We go through it with them. We show them where to change the AC filters and what size it takes, how the sprinkler system works, where the breaker box is, pretty much the full gamut of everything that would have to do with the house. It familiarizes them with it, and they're not just getting tossed a set of keys and going, here's your new home, hope you find everything. So we do that, and then we check on them periodically. We drive by at least once a month, if not more frequently. A lot of the homes that I manage, we have multiple homes in the same subdivision, and a lot of them on the same street. So we drive by one, we're looking at the others that are on that same street. And then periodically throughout their lease, we'll also stop in and visit with them and go through the house and check it all out.
Okay, good. I mean, I just mostly want a tenant that's going to pay the rent, and I know that my place is going to be taken good care of. I mean, I haven't done this out-of-state acquisition of a rental property before. Like, can you go ahead and send me the tenant rental application so I can be in on the approval with you?
I will send you the application. You're more than welcome to review it, look it over, ask any questions you want. I'm comfortable with telling you once I have an application completed and that we've done the background check and what the score is. We rate all our tenants on a certain score. But I can't get into specifics with you about who they are because there are some protected categories, and I want to protect you as much as I want to protect me. So if for some reason you think a tenant's not going to be a good fit for you because of their race, sexual orientation, color, creed, they dye their hair blue. I don't care what it is, but if it's a protected category, I want to make sure you're not telling me you don't want that person as a tenant because that could get us in a lot of hot water. So we got to make sure we're both on the same page before we get started and that we're using the point system together. And if you're not comfortable with it for some reason, we need to talk about why.
I just want to be sure I'm dealing with a company that understands my needs. Like, do you own investment property yourself personally?
I do. Yeah, I do. And a lot of my staff also own rental properties, and we're investors ourselves. So we do this for a living for other clients, but we also do it as income for ourselves. So it's very important for me to be able to put myself in your shoes, knowing that we're taking care of your money, essentially, your asset. And I do the same with mine. I mean, I don't manage all my own properties. I have a few that I take care of. And to be quite honest with you, most of those are the really easy ones that always pay their rent on time and that kind of stuff. But I have some of my property managers manage some of the homes that I own personally. And then I have some investments in other areas that are managed by other people. So I've seen both sides of it. And, I want to watch out for my clients like I want managers watching out for me.
What's your fee structure like?
That's a good question. I'm glad that you didn't ask that question in the very beginning because the ones that shop by fee structure alone are usually the ones that want the cheapest rate. And that's not necessarily the best way to discover or to shop for a good manager. Generally speaking, the most expensive part of the leasing and management process is going to be the initial leasing fee. That's generally 75% of 1 month's rent, but it covers all your marketing, covers all your screening of tenants, the showings, background searches, leasing of the property itself. And then it also covers the commission because we don't just put a sign in the yard and hope somebody drives by to see it. We put it in what's called MLS or multiple listing service. And for that, any agency that has a particular tenant that can come our way or that would be a good fit for us, they can bring to us. And for that, I pay a commission for it. but that commission's paid out of the fee that we charge our clients. So there's nothing additional that you would pay on top of getting us to lease it for you. And then monthly management, depending on your portfolio, usually your first 1 through 5 homes are going to be at 10% per month. And then after that, it starts to go down a little bit as your portfolio grows. We can reduce the fee structure a little bit depending on the size of your portfolio.
Okay, so that's 10% per month. So if I buy a home from you that rents for $1,500 a month, $150 of that will be for managing the property for me.
That's correct.
And do you send me like a monthly statement that shows my income and any expenses and all that? Or?
I sure do. We'll send you a monthly statement, comes out each month along with we like to set it up to where it's portal for you. So that's the easiest way for most of our clients. You'll get an email that says your statement's ready. You click on the link. It takes you right to your portal. You can see everything. You can also log into your portal at any time and see the current maintenance that's going on, any notes that we've put in the system about the tenant, the property, anything that's happened. You have access to all of that. And then we also like to set up funds to be direct deposited into your account. It's generally easier that way. The old way of writing and sending a check has kind of gone by the wayside. I do have a few clients that still like the paper check, so we will send that out if that's the way you truly want it, but I'm certainly going to try and talk you into letting me direct deposit the funds into your account, so we just push a button and your money's there the next day.
All right, well, I kind of like your answers here. You sound like you know what you're talking about. You've definitely been there and done that. You invest yourself. You're a member of quite a few organizations there. Anything else you need from me for us to be successful going ahead? Or?
Well, to be honest with you, we're going to have to go through your interview process and make sure that you're a good candidate for us. And then from that, we want to put your goals out in front so that we know what you're trying to achieve. So why don't I send you some information, give you an idea of everything that we do, have some information you can look over, and let's kind of goes over the process. And then let's schedule another phone call so that we can set up your goals and expectations and make sure that we're meeting or exceeding them.
Hey, that sounds good. Wait, it was good to get to know you a little bit, Jay. I think my phone battery's about to die here. So, yeah, thanks a lot. I'll look for your email.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, sir.
Hey, that was pretty cool. I like how that felt.
Yeah, it was nice. That's generally how our phone calls go. And I'll be honest with you, some of our clients don't necessarily like being interviewed, but the majority of them that are truly intent on investing don't mind. So the ones that have a problem with us asking them some personal details about what they want to do and what they hope to achieve and everything else, if they have a problem with it, that's usually not a good candidate for us. Because if our clients contact us and they're not well educated about real estate, that just means that we need to work harder and make sure they're comfortable with it. So I'd rather educate them and make sure they're truly doing something they want to do, rather than just either one, not work with them, or, hope they do good on their own, which generally isn't going to happen. So we try to educate the ones that are new to the business, and sometimes even the ones that are well seasoned need to be educated a little bit on our market. Because if you're not familiar with the DFW market and you're basing it on, what they've done in Vegas or California or, wherever it might be, those are different markets. And so you've got to make sure that they know how things are done here versus what they're used to.
Yeah, I thought that was such a smart thing to say in our little role-playing game there where you asked me about interviewing me. And that's probably the type of, like you say, the client that you would want to deal with, one that would be comfortable with that, because this is a long-term relationship, both from me to you and you back to me. Hey, well, this has been great, Jay. Why don't you let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and Classic Property Management?
Anybody that wants to contact us can do that either through our website, which is classicpm.com, CLASSIC, P as in property, M as in management.com. You're welcome to call. Our office number is 817-640-2064, and I'm at extension 1212. Or you can also email me. It's my name, Jay Hartley, at classicpm.com.
Thanks so much for joining me on Get Rich Education today. I think my listeners have really found it valuable.
Thank you for the invitation.
Hey, well, I hope that you liked that mock property management interview with Jay Hartley. As an investor yourself, you've got to like hearing that Jay owns investment property himself. He understands it from the inside and he knows what you need as an investor. Well, you know, the smartest thing that Jay says that impresses me, it's that as an out-of-area investor grilling him, he bends things back around and also wants to interview me and know my goals. So he's not just taking on all comers. He doesn't need to. He doesn't want a client that's hard to deal with. And when he finds the right client, he wants to help me over the long term and know what my goals are. Did you ever do that when you were in a job interview yourself and you wanted a position, and to sound assertive near the end of your interview, you quizzed the prospective employer a bit to make sure that that company is the right fit for you? I mean, that makes you look so unneedy, not at all desperate, and might even make an employer make a better compensation offer to you to get you. Jay Hartley knows management, and Jay knows what investors need in Dallas-Fort Worth. ClassicPM.com. Until next week, I'm grateful that you've been with me on Get Rich Education again, and don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to the Get Rich Education podcast, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.